Hey guys, how you doing? It's Friday, September 24th, 2021, and today we're doing a rebuild of an American Standard Colony toilet. This toilet requires a special part that's very critical. The bolts are a 1/4 inch in diameter, but what I'm doing right now is I'm removing this handle. The customer just bought this, so they're going to actually return this to Lowe's or Home Depot, wherever they bought this from. So I'm having some difficulty taking it apart because it's kind of junky. I don't know how it comes apart. So I'm staring at that, and y'all are staring at my bald spot here. So figuring that out for a second. You can see in my bucket there, I've got some blue tank cleaner. Customer put that in there. I instructed them they can't put that in there. It'll ruin the parts, and it voids our warranty as well. So now I finally got that handle out of there, and I've taken the blue tablet out of there, the solid part anyway. I'm putting the handle back in the packaging for the customer so they can return it. If you guys can, hit the like button, subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Taking time to show you guys these videos, and one day I hope to monetize it, but I'm not going to charge you guys anything for it, so help me out. So I'm getting rid of the flapper there. You can see the blue dye everywhere. Stuff just spreads like wildfire. I'm getting me a little towel folded up for a knee pad. Forgot to grab my knee pads in, and the customer and I spent a lot of time talking, so I didn't want to waste any more time during the day. So now what I'm trying to do is wash out the blue dye tablet. And when the customer replaced the handle, they let me know that's when it started leaking. And I initially seen that the supply line, the nut was completely disconnected, but for some reason the supply line did not like the old fill valve. So I went ahead and put my new supply line on and installed the fill valve that we're going to be using for this rebuild. So now I'm going to get the water back on, and then we're going to get the old fill valve out of the way and start washing out the tank here. That blue dye just spreads like wildfire. I actually had a job a couple weeks ago where they had a dye tablet in there, and I made the mistake of sucking it up with my shop vac right away, and it then blew little droplets of that blue dye out of the exhaust and all over the bathroom. So after that, basically I had to buy a new shower curtain for the lady and wipe down a whole bunch of surfaces in the bathroom. So after that, I decided I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to make sure the tank is 100% clear water before I use my shop vac in anybody's home. So getting everything cleaned out and flushed down there. We're getting pretty clear now. And that's why I went ahead and put in the new fill valve, because it was leaking on the floor, and I needed to get that tank cleaned out. So now I'm going to get the water turned back off and then run and grab the wet dry vac again so we can get that tank dried out. Alright, so we got the wet dry vac. I've got the Milwaukee M18 wet dry vac. This works excellent for the exact purpose that I'm using it for, just to get water out of toilets and light pickup and things like that. I'm not really all that big of a fan of it for the dry vac capability, because the hose is so small. You really can't get a lot of big items, but it works really well for what I use it for. I kind of use two of them now. I've got one that I use just for wet, and I got the other one with the filter in it that I use for dry cleaning, so I don't have to keep removing my filter every time I want to clean up any water out of a toilet tank. So now I'm removing the old bolts here. That takes a 7/16 nut driver, and the bolts that are on these American Standards are 1/4 inch in diameter. versus the 3/8 inch bolts that we normally install on just about every other toilet there is. When I take my tank off, I like to lay that towel down on the seat so I don't scratch it up or anything. And then we're going to get our old tank to bowl gasket off of here. I've got a bucket just outside the room that I'm throwing all this stuff in. And I use the very long channel locks. Those are probably like 20 inches long to get the flush valve nut off of there and also to install it. I've just had much better luck using those than using my large 12-inch channel locks. Then I'm going to spray a little cleaner here. Something's wrong with the nozzle. So I'm going to spray a little cleaner on the tank to bowl, get all that clean and dry. And then I'm also going to remove this flush valve, and I'll also clean up that inside of the tank a little bit as well. It also just helps you check for cracks and things like that, but it looks really nice when you have everything taken out of there and you wipe down the bottom of it when you're done, and you show the customer, you know, they can see all the nice shiny parts, and the bottom of the tank is also clean. Alright, so now I'm let that simple green soak in a little bit, get off that residue. Now I'm wiping everything down, getting ready to wipe down the inside of the tank. You can see just how a couple seconds with that cleaner, how it really cleans up the bottom pretty good. Almost looks like new porcelain, other than where the blue dye has stained it. Now what I'm doing is I'm grabbing a tape measure and I'm measuring how far it is from the bottom of the tank to the top of the tank lever hole. And that's for measuring your flush valve. You don't have to do it this way. You can just take your old flush valve, set it up next to your new one, and cut it. But this was just the easier way for me. I usually do it that way now, just so that way I'm not getting the residue from all the old rubber pieces all over everything. So I'm cutting that down, and on this toilet, that's about 9 inches is the height of the flush valve for it. This is a mistake I see a lot of do-it-yourselfers do, is they'll just put it in as it comes instead of reading the directions. But if the fill valve has a malfunction and the toilet keeps running, the water will run out of the tank lever hole instead of going down the overflow because it was never installed correctly. So again, I'm using my extra large channel locks to tighten the flush valve nut, and then you have the option really using any tank gasket you want. These are both the same. The red one comes with the universal kit, and the black one comes with the American Standard bolt kit. So I'm getting those out right now. So there's the American Standard bolt kit. That's got my 1/4 inch bolts in it, and I'll show you those just for comparison once I get them out of the package here. If you try to put those larger 3/8 bolts in this toilet, you will most likely crack it. I had one last week where that was the case. Somebody had repaired it and put in the larger bolts, and it had cracked the toilet, caused it to leak on the floor after I touched it. So there on the right, the American Standard bolt, and on the left is your standard tank to bowl bolt. But on this one, you need to use those skinny American Standard bolts. I usually get those from Ferguson. They're $6 or $8 for that bolt pack, and I carry a couple of those on my truck. So here comes my tank gasket. The red one, again, is the one that comes with the universal kit. The black one came with the American Standard kit, but they're exactly identical. Either one will work for this application. And I'm going to tuck my towel out of the way there, set my tank back on the bowl. You can see everything's looking nice and clean in there. And then I've got my nuts and washers. Again, this is a 7/16 nut driver that we'll use to tighten these, but first I just get everything started by hand. right. So I'm getting those bolts in there, getting that one on the right-hand side started. And now I'm kind of fooling around looking for my nut driver. I think I eventually find it over by my left knee. I set it on my little kneeling towel right beside me. So when you tighten the bolts from the tank to the bowl, you have to be very careful not to over tighten them. Most tanks, if you look at the bowl, there will be little legs that are coming up from the bowl that touch the tank. And once the tank is touching the bowl, you do not want to tighten it down any further. You can crack the tank. But I like to tighten them down evenly on each side as I go. And that to me just produces a little bit better result. You can see I shook the tank there to see what kind of movement was left in it. And now I'm going to get down there here in a second to see just how much room is between those legs. So now I'm going to cut my fill valve tube that goes to the overflow. This is also a very important thing a lot of people mess up. The air gap that the fill valve comes with, you got to make sure you install that properly, otherwise the fill valve can cause the toilet to run continuously. So I've got that set in there. Now I'm going to take my toilet handle. This one is a universal handle that comes with the kit. And what you can do is you can actually just bend this plastic. It'll stay in shape. I've bent it probably a little farther than I need to, but that's just in case it tries to return back to its form. It doesn't bend too far to where it touches the tank. You can see the tank is a little bit curved. And on your toilet handle, it's one of the very few plumbing things that you run into that's reverse thread. So it's lefty-tighty, righty-loosey on this one. And now I'm getting rid of the flapper that it comes with. That's just your standard 3-gallon flapper that comes in the Pro 45 kit. And I've got a Corky flapper that I've had some pretty good success with using on these toilets. I'd already thrown away the packaging just to save a little bit of space. And so on this toilet, the dial for the large hole will be open, and I ended up setting this one at 4, but cut some of it out. But it took me a little while to get that setting. I probably should have just went out to the truck and got another package so I could figure it out. But you know how hard-headed sometimes we can be. Instead of taking 5 seconds to go to the truck, you struggle with something for 20 minutes. So I'm trimming my chain here. It's very important so you don't get the links caught up on each other. And I like just about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch of slack between the tank lever and the tank chain, or the flapper chain. And I just tightened the supply line up to the toilet. Now I'm drying everything up, cleaning up the floor a little bit. Make sure that everything is clean and dry before I start cutting the water on. That way, if water shows up, I know it's new. And one little thing you see me do there is I grab the float on the fill valve and then start opening the water. The reason I do that is oftentimes you'll start opening a multi-turn valve, and when you do, it'll vibrate really heavily and make a loud noise. And sometimes that can sound a little frightening to the homeowners. So now we got the toilet filling up for the first time. And again, as I said, I cut some of this out, but I spent probably 15 minutes adjusting the flapper when I should have just walked outside and got the cardboard that it came on and done it that way. But again, I was being hard-headed. I'm just looking around, making sure nothing's leaking. I get everything dried up, and then I put some toilet paper underneath of both of the bolts and the shut-off valve. And I let everything sit for 15 minutes and make sure there's no leaks. On this one, I actually ended up being there for another 45 minutes or so. So it got plenty of checking. The customer was very talkative, and I was talking with them, so I had plenty of time to check this one. I put a little cleaner on the seat, and anywhere I might have gotten my dirty hands, I'm wearing these clear vinyl gloves. I don't know how many of y'all are dealing with this, but the nitrile gloves are hard to come by these days. They're either $40 a box on Amazon, or you can't find them in any stores, and some of them just aren't that good. You know, if I'm going to pay big dollars for the nitrile gloves, they should be good at least. So one thing I look for when I flush a toilet is when the flush is completed in the bowl, I'm looking for the flapper to close at nearly the same time that the flush evacuates the toilet. So either nearly at the same time or right after. So you can see I got the water set way too high right now. So it actually double flushed that first time. So there I go, adjusting it again. Point out the fact that I could have thrown the little piece of cardboard in, but I took everything out of his package before I brought it in the house, just to save space in my buckets. And now we got everything set up, and I've got everything adjusted properly. And again, I was being foolish and played around with that flapper for too long. The last thing I do is put the tank lid on, flush it a few times to make sure that once you put the lid on, the handle doesn't hit the top of the lid and cause the flush not to work properly. But everything went well here. And I hope you all enjoyed this video. Hopefully it brought you something helpful. Again, if you have that American Standard Colony and you're a homeowner and you're messing with this stuff, make sure you get the right bolts. If you try to put the larger ones in there, you will break it. And if you like this video, give me a like, send a comment below, or subscribe to the channel. We're doing a lot more of this. My goal is to do at least one video a week. I've been doing more than that so far, but you know, it does take a little bit of time to do all this, and you can't on every job set up, you know, your camera to record what you're doing. So again, thank you all for watching. See you on the next one, and leave me a comment of what you'd like to see on a future video. Thanks for watching.